Welcome to the 2024 Cybersecurity Training by Office Smith LLC, designed specifically for businesses to provide to their employees. Our objective today is to keep both your company and your family safe from cyber threats. We're going to discuss changes that companies should consider, and we're going to update you on the trends and familiarize you with some of the types of cybercrime that we have. Why should we care? 70% of people on the street would give away their work password, 50% of them even without a chocolate bar bribe. This is a test that was done in 2004, 2008, and 2016, and the results only got worse. Cybercrime is growing, not shrinking. In 2020, cybercrime was estimated at 1.5 trillion, 3 times the size of Walmart. If it were a country, it would be the third largest economy behind the United States and China. We're on track for 10.5 trillion in the year of 2025, according to experts. Almost 3/4 of IT security professionals believe their organization is more likely than not to be compromised by a cyber attack in the next year. There's hundreds more of facts that you can get. If you're interested, just send me an email. jfinnegan@officesmithllc.com of scary stats. But one of the biggest reasons that you should care as a company is cybersecurity insurance costs. Cybersecurity insurance costs are going up significantly year over year. And many people who have been compromised find it difficult, if not impossible, to get cybersecurity again. So that's why we should care. It hits us in the pocketbook. Let's go ahead and jump through some of the most common attacks. We're not going to spend a lot of time on these. I got this off the internet. It's a great summary of the most common types of cyber attacks that we see this year, these days. So the phishing attack, that's emails, SMS, websites, and it's by far the most common. So we're going to go into a lot of detail on that. Ransomware is where they get a piece of malware on your computer and it encrypts your files, and you have to pay to get your files unlocked. Denial of service, this is one that's probably not as familiar to people who aren't in the technical field. This is where a whole bunch of computers send signals to, say, a website or something like that, and the objective is to send so many signals that the website cannot manage all of the requests and it becomes unresponsive, called the denial of service attack. Man-in-the-middle attack is where a hacker gets between you and what you really want to do. So if you were going to your bank, they would intercept that information and then send it on to your bank, allowing them to get the information that you are trying to communicate with your valid site. SQL injection, this is something that really shouldn't be around anymore. It's only a result of poor development for web apps and things like that. Each web app, anything that you're putting in a password in, or putting information in on the internet, is going to be using, in all likelihood, a back-end database. Those databases have their own special language, and with that special language, if you use the correct characters, you can break out of the code that they're supposed to be interpreting and run your own code, capturing the database, doing all sorts of terrible things. So, if you do have SQL injection, you need to find a new developer for your product or train your internal team so that it doesn't happen again. Cross-site scripting, I mean, we've all had those pop-up ads that come up and tell you you've got ransomware or, something horrible is going on your system and you need to call a number. This is cross-site scripting. It's injecting malicious scripts into web pages. Often this is done through advertisements that pop up on those web pages. Those are where we're mostly getting those problems. But you can have malicious websites that take advantage of security issues with JavaScript and things like that, where you go to them and it damages or installs malware on your computer. Zero-day exploits. As you know, every day, anyone in the security environment knows that there are hundreds of new security problems found on a weekly basis, if not thousands. And we have specific name for the ones that are being actively used by hackers right now to cause problems for good people. Uh, and that is, or at least normal users, right? So that is a 0-day exploit. That means this is a security problem that hackers are currently using to get into your system. Then there's DNS spoofing. When your computer talks to another computer, it doesn't use www.google.com. What it uses is a service called DNS, which asks where a particular computer server is, and it just gets a number back. Like, let's say, 8.8.8.8, which is Google's DNS server. And if you go ahead and are able to capture those queries and redirect them elsewhere, then it gives you a lot of ability to capture data by sending them to fake websites. And it can often be paired with man-in-the-middle attacks. All right, let's put all that behind us. That's just some background information. What we're going to focus on today is the stuff that affects you and me most often. Most of that stuff is just going to affect IT professionals. But phishing attacks everyone. It's the most common attack by far, and about 90% of all cyber attacks are phishing. This year, they started using QR codes to get around the security in businesses because the security in business is getting much better, and it's getting much harder for them to phish people. And as a result, they are now trying to get people to use a QR code on their phone in order to get around that security. So if you do get an email and it does have a QR code, I would advise against ever using QR codes at this point. Just because this year it's so common, it's most likely a phishing email if you're getting a QR code. And the additional item that we've got going this year is AI. Artificial intelligence is making those phishing attacks so much more convincing. This is this is kind of a brief description of a display name attack. Now, display name attack, there's two parts of every email address, and in most modern email browsers, you can see pretty clearly that it'll be like the name, and then in parentheses, typically just like little sideways triangles on either side of there. It's going to show the actual email address. And you can actually put anything in the display name. I mean, you could put Taylor Swift, Donald Trump, Biden, anything you want, in there. The greatest person in the world, whatever you can want, is available to put in the display name. Nobody checks that. And so that is one of the most common ways that they try and trick us, is they change the display name. So you need to train yourself, your family, everybody, to look at the actual email addresses. So let's go ahead and take a look at how this breaks out. So we've got here the exact sender name impersonations of so where an email is sent masquerading as a trusted source, such as a colleague, but you can see here, obviously, the techcompany.xyz.com is not apple.com. And so even though it still says Steve Jobs, as long as they look here, you're fine. And that's about 74%. Now, these percentages are probably a little bit old. It's probably a little bit all moved down a little bit, but it's still a good rule of thumb here. So similar name impersonations, when an email is sent masquerading as coming from a trusted source, such as a colleague, with minor changes. So this could be Steve Jobs at techcompanyxyz.com. So that's going to be both of these, right? So you should still be able to recognize this. And if they are able to get Apple and instead use Steve Jobs at apple.com, then hopefully you're going to be looking close enough to notice that it's Jabs and not Jobs. Lookalike cousin domain spoofing, when an email is sent from a similar domain in which hackers registered the domain and set the right authentication records in the DNS. So this is Steve Jobs at apple.com, but they're a lot more creative than that. It's probably going to be exec.apple.com or info@apple.com or support@apple.com or corporate at at corporate.apple.com. So they're going to try and do whatever they can with dots and slashes, and you might see just apple.com EU or co or .info. So they can try and move this around quite a bit in order to fool people, but that's only about 2% where they're getting that sneaky. And then exact domain name spoofs, where it looks exactly like it's supposed to. That can happen in a couple of different ways. One, if you have a whitelisted IP address for your mail server, such as an actual mail web app that sends emails for your company, I would recommend actually using a different domain for those. The other thing that you have is if you've got printers that are really old that don't use it often, you'll have a whitelisted domain for your public-facing IP addresses in those locations where you need that functionality. The other thing that people often do is they'll use different language sets. So what we're looking at most of the time when we're working on an English computer in the United States is we're looking at the English character set. But there's also a Russian character set and a Latin character set and wingdings and all sorts of other character sets. And so often what they'll do to try and fool people is they'll use a letter from one of those other character sets. And computers see that as different, but as people, it looks, if not identical, very, very close. So it might be, the A on Apple is, squared and just doesn't look right compared to normal. So, and that's only 0.5%, so half of a percent. But it's getting, more and more difficult to identify these things. So those are the things you want to watch out. Make sure you're doing a really good inspection of the email addresses. And sometimes if you're dealing with a fishy email, the right thing to do is to just go ahead and type that email address in yourself to respond rather than doing a reply. So the 10 most common phishing attacks that we have this year, the subject lines are possible typo, HR important, dress code changes, HR please update W4 for file, so taxes, Adobe sign, your performance review, okay, a couple of vacation ones, training is past due, you were mentioned in a document strategic plan draft, you have a new voicemail, bad customer review received, please take action ASP, AP, and some of the ones that we're seeing a lot is DocuSign. We're seeing a ton of DocuSign ones where they're trying to get you to click on things. And we're also finding that very frequently anything that has an HTML attachment is a danger. So we've got a few things in there to try and identify those for those. So then there's other types of ways that they can get you. We've already talked about the QR codes, just don't. Then for email links, I encourage everyone to go to safepage@google.com. This is a great resource that Google has put together to try and help us learn a little bit about how links work. So we're going to go into this just a little bit. All right. So this is the subdomain before the dot. This is the second level domain. That's typically what we purchase as companies. And then this is the top level domain. And that is typically what, managed by a internet infrastructure company. And then path, anything after that .com or that top level domain, .net is also very popular, or .org or .gov. This is all related to how your web server is set up. So And you can see here the HTTPS, that just means that your connection with the web server is encrypted. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're connected to the correct web server. It simply means that you're connected using an encrypted connection. All right. So the bad actor can set up a URL that may look legitimate. See, this is where I was talking about how they'll go ahead and add a bunch of stuff before and after, and then try and use different, different character sets and things like that to fool us. But obviously, we can tell that Google.com is not Google.com. So you need to be careful when you read these, just like when you read the email addresses. So it's also important that you know how to identify, and just like what I said with the email addresses, if you're not sure that that's the right website, anything that anybody emails you, it's better to type it in yourself or use a password manager to jump you to the correct place. That's one of the things I love about password managers is if you're in the wrong place, it won't suggest the password for you. So, all right. I was talking a little about encryption there. Okay. Let's go ahead and jump over to the quiz. And I recommend everybody take this quiz. It's a great way to get familiar with how this all works. So let's pretend this is our email here that we're receiving. And we see www.bouseandbunscafe.com. So if we hover over this, you'll notice that in the bottom corner here, that's where it shows what the link actually goes to. And so I can see that that's BA0S and bunscafe.com/menu. So I'm going to say that this is not secure. Okay. And so when you are going to click on links, either that are emailed to you or even just navigating the web, make sure you know where you're going and where you're expecting to go. And if you're not sure, type it in directly. That's all we're going to do here. Let's jump back to our PowerPoint. For attachments and web addresses, we can go to VirusTotal. VirusTotal is actually a service that is hosted by Google as well. And if we drag a file onto here, it will scan that file with some 60 different, all right, let's just go ahead and scan a basic file here, 60 different virus scanners, so that you can see how this works. So I'm just going to take this window over here, and I'm going to drag over this JPEG, and we're going to drop it in here. Now this gets made available to all the security people that Google allows to look at it. So make sure that you're not uploading anything too sensitive. All right, so then you saw I just dragged it, I dropped it, and I said go, and you can see here that it's going to analyze that item with some 56 different virus scanners. So we can see here that it was scanned by 60 virus scanners, and at that point we've kind of done our due diligence on it. We can probably open it up, but you might see links in there, right? And we want to make sure that we're going to go to a safe link. So a URL is going to be either a link that you can click on, or it's going to be a website. So let's just try OfficeSmithLLC.com. Look at that. So no, everybody has scanned OfficeSmithLLC.com and found no problems. Let's go ahead and reanalyze it because we've checked that before, and let's go ahead and reanalyze it today so that you can see what it would look like if it was a new website. So this is what you would want to do if you were receiving an unusual attachment or an unusual link. And if there are links in the attachment, you'll also want to run them through VirusTotal to make sure that you're staying safe. Okay, let's jump back. And ultimately, you are the best. The employees are the best way to defend against this stuff. You know, when you get something that's a little bit off, a weird phone call, a weird request, that's when you want to pick up the phone and call the number that you know, or at the very least send a text. But I recommend giving them a call and talking about it, so that you know and they know that you're dealing with real information. One of the big things that they do out there is called business email compromise, and they trick businesses into sending payments to the wrong place or things like that. Um, the additional training, there's so much training. I mean, I go through 2 hours of security training a week to try and stay current on everything that's going on. But you know, not everybody has that desire to learn that much. But if you do desire to learn a little bit more, we've got this great link for additional user education links. It's all free. So if you just go to officesmithllc.home user ed, you can see our resources here. We have a few that I think are just really great. It goes over a bunch of the stuff. There's some ways that you can test your password, and some really great child safety websites. I think that this one here, PBS's Cybersecurity Lab, is a great one if you really want to have a reasonably fun way to learn all about cybersecurity. It's pretty fun and educational. And it goes through a bunch of other things that are great resources for you. So, all right. All right, let's go ahead and jump a little bit into what's going on that's new and exciting. Let me just come back for a second. Yeah. Okay. So IoT is a abbreviation for the Internet of Things. It's your smart washer dryer. It's your smart garage door opener. It's your smart locks. It's all those little things that we've added to our houses that give us convenience. Not very shockingly, security is not their main priority. One of the most notable hacks recently, in the last month or so, has been that somebody got hacked through their smart washer dryer, an LG washer, I believe. And so what they're doing is they're hacking those devices, which don't have a ton of power, but they're useful for botnets. And botnets are used in denial of service, where you have a whole bunch of computers all sending requests to one website or things like, or corporate server to try and shut it down. So they can also be used to have a foothold inside your home network. Phones, apps on both the iOS and Android frequently report approved apps in the stores have malware. I mean, it's like if I don't see one monthly, I'm just not paying attention. Such and such app with millions of downloads turns out to have malware. And almost nobody has any security on their cell phones. You might have an MDM if your IT department is managing your phones, your cell phones, but almost no one has much security. And as a result, 1 in 6 mobile devices are infected. 1 in 6. That means that no matter how small your company is, chances are someone has a hacked phone. Social engineering. There's a guy, a really famous guy, just recently passed away, Kevin Mitnick. I'm probably saying that wrong. I'm horrible with names. But he was a king of hacking, and he was not technical at all. But he was very personable. And what he would do is he would call and tell people some sob story, and he would get them to give him their credentials. He'd show up in person, tell you that he was there and supposed to be inspecting this, that, or the other, and get you to let him in to things that he wasn't supposed to get into. And he was very effective. So social engineering is still very much alive. There are still people who, all of these scams that are nowadays cyber crime, they all started as mail or phone or in-person scams. Social engineering is the original original cybersecurity scam place, and it's still quite effective. No matter how much security you have, no matter what you do, if someone gives their password to someone they shouldn't, all of your security is useless. So it's very important that you have people trained to not uh, be tricked by social engineering. Cameras. Cameras have shown some amazing capabilities this year. They can actually look at your shoulders and tell with a high degree of accuracy what you're typing on your keyboard. Not only that, but they can also just listen to you typing on your keyboard and with a high degree of accuracy tell you what you're typing just by listening. So the pretty crazy stuff going on with cameras and calls. And then there was the BIOS attack that happened just recently. There's a special feature in most computers nowadays called PXE, and what that does is it allows your computer to install software. That's how these big data centers are able to spin up their servers so quickly. Unfortunately, that BIOS tool was had a vulnerability in it, and it meant that anyone who was using PXE, unless they patched their BIOS or did something specific to avoid it, was suddenly vulnerable to having malware installed by PXE. So, I hope everyone has mitigated that personally by turning PXE off. You'll find it as either a network stack or something like that in your BIOS, which typically you can access on a Windows machine by holding Shift and clicking Restart from the login screen. Holding Shift and clicking Restart, and then selecting, then it should pop up and give you some options, and you'll want to be in the advanced options and go into the BIOS from there. One of the most remarkable things that happened this year was it turns out the security industry is fairly certain that there was a hardware backdoor on iPhones this year. I think that there's a likely possibility that Steve Jobs wanted to have an option in case Dr. Evil had nuclear launch codes on his iPhone, so that he could save the world. Unfortunately, it seems like Dr. Evil found out about it and used it to hack people, and as a result, your phone could get hacked by receiving a carefully crafted iMessage. You didn't have to open it, you didn't have to look at it, just had to be sent to your phone number on your iPhone, and it would hack your iPhone. They did find out about that. Kaspersky did some really good work there, and they managed to identify it. And then Apple patched it, and so it's not available anymore. That's probably why none of us are hearing about it on the news. But it was huge. It was huge, and I can't stress enough that it's just simply speculation. Nobody's positive that there was a purpose backdoor, but there was some special commands. So whether it was Apple or the chip manufacturers, no one's totally positive, but the security industry is fairly certain that it was a purposely created by Apple in the case of an emergency. Anyways, then we had some manufacturers smart tension wrenches. The tension wrenches, right? So this is something that you would use to fasten something on in a manufacturing environment to get a specific, torque on the bolts that you're putting on. And I thought it was really interesting. Like a week before, we heard about an Alaska Air Boeing flight where a door popped off, and it apparently had some loose bolts or something like that. And I'm like, oh, that is so interesting, because just the week after that, they came out with these hacked tension wrenches, and it turns out that they, it's very possible that someone could hack something like that and change your settings in a manufacturing environment, which is just a little bit alarming. It turns out that it looks like somebody in Boeing's case had replaced the door and not replaced the bolts. So I don't know that it actually was a hacking of their ratchets, but certainly it's something that makes you go to have those ratchets, those tension ratchets get get hacked immediately after we find out about those falling off. The other thing that we see a lot is in construction. We have remote controls for cranes and things like that that use radios and the radio commands. And there was a big paper done about a year ago, and it showed that there's absolutely zero security. If you have a radio that can record, you can simply record what people do with that, and then you can play that back and control their crane, which obviously brings up a whole bunch of safety issues. I mean, certainly I hope that people who are doing those sorts of radio control construction devices are going to get those security up to snuff so that there aren't bad actors that can cause problems on construction sites. In 2024, one of the biggest things is SIM swaps, where let's say I go into Verizon and I say, hey, I'm Donald Trump. I'd like you to get me a new iPhone and put my phone number, my current phone number there. And they're all great. And they ring me up, and it turns out I'm not Donald Trump. And as a result, I have managed to get his phone. And a lot of people are using their phones, their phone numbers, for multi-factor authentication. And so when I get his multi-factor authentication texts, I'm then able to take over any of those accounts, which is why we're seeing so many multi-factor people say, don't use phone numbers, use an app. Anyways, let's go ahead and keep moving here. So USBs are so much more dangerous than people realize. I have a USB that was sent to me from Lacert, because I also do taxes, and and it turns out that that Lacert, when I inserted it in, it automatically ran stuff. And so we have all sorts of risks with something that runs automatically as soon as we put it into our computers. I know I know a person who is in fraud prevention at a large financial institution, and they had told me a story just this last year of somebody who flew in from China, got a rental car, drove to their parking lot, threw a whole bunch of USBs on the ground that had their logo and said fourth quarter layoffs on it. Then they got back in their rental car, drove back to the airport, and flew back to China, all on false names. And so, if you do find a USB, it's never worth putting it in. They've also created USBs that when you insert them into your computer, will actually fry your computer, let all the magic smoke out. Those are capacitors that are set up on a USB, and they cook computers. The most alarming one that we've heard about this year, though, is some journalists who were criticizing some despots in South America this last year, and the despots didn't like it, and they sent them a USB with explosives in it. And as soon as they plugged it in their computer, claiming to be a source, there was a huge explosion. Fortunately, I don't think anyone was seriously injured. However, a USB that can store 120 gigabytes, can go very fast, is 20 bucks. They're simply not worth the risk. It's better to just not put them in your computer. The next thing I'd like to go into is something I learned about from the Cyber Attack Survival Manual, which is a great book if you're interested in getting a better understanding from a book about really what the risks are out there. And I believe it was put together by Heather Vescent and Nick Selby. Great book if you have time to read. And one of the things they talked about was how children are targeted for identity theft. Often in the United States, we get our social security numbers when our children are born. However, as soon as those social security numbers are issued, if people can find out what they are, they can use them for identity theft. And so what's happening is The criminals are working with their credit before they even get to the age where they're interested. 16, 14, 18, they suddenly, go to start using their credit, and it turns out their credit is already destroyed because they've had somebody using them to get credit cards and all sorts of other illicit activity. And so that's a real mess. And so they, in the book, encourage us not to get our children's social security numbers until they actually need them. Chrome this year was caught tracking in incognito mode, which is alarming for people who want things to be private. Then there was voice assistants caught recording always. So a lot of the apps that you install on your phone, they have terms of service, and some of those terms of service say that they can use your microphone to record you at all times. Nobody reads those, and so they can put pretty much whatever they want in those, and they have. And so the collection of your data from your cell phones, your voice assistants, that's all collected to try and market to us. Have you ever started talking about getting your kid a bike, and then suddenly you start seeing a bunch of bike ads? Yeah, that's what's happening. As a matter of fact, the Cox Media Group was advertising that service, and I've talked with other data aggregators who are also offering that service, but they didn't put it on their webpage where everybody could see it. So, that is happening. Catfishing is a thing. So a lot of people nowadays are using online dating apps. Catfishing is when you use one of those romance apps to try and trick people into giving you money. Like, let's say that one of the funny ones I heard was that there was a restaurant, and it was setting up a whole bunch of dates at their restaurant. And they would cancel last minute, and the other person would show up, and they're already all dressed up and show up at the restaurant. And most of them say, what the heck, I'm just going to eat anyways. I'm here anyways. I'm all dressed up. I'm going to go in and eat. And so they were driving business for their restaurant using the romance site. Other cases, it's a little bit more nefarious. Grandma has found some really, good-looking guy, and or grandpa or whomever, they're great. They chat back and forth, and all of a sudden, they're traveling in Bolivia, and they've lost their traveler's checks, and they just need to borrow a couple $1,000s to get home, and so they take advantage of people that way. Another thing that they do is they say that the person that you've been involved with is actually a minor, and they're going to report you to the police and things like that. I assume that that's when illicit pics are shared. And I should mention that illicit pics, if you share those, be aware that 50% of people who receive those pictures share them with another person. So you really have no privacy. I highly recommend never sending illicit pics, even to your significant other. Deepfakes. Deepfakes are crazy now. Deepfake is when you use AI to take an image or a video or an audio recording and make that your own voice and appearance. The most remarkable one that I'm aware of recently was a bank in Hong Kong had a conference call where everybody in the conference call was a deepfake. They weren't who they said they were. They were all scammers except for the victim. And the CFO was in this conference call. The images were convincing enough, the sound was convincing enough, that the victim transferred 200 million Hong Kong dollars, roughly $25 million US, to 5 banks in Hong Kong. And so, you really can't trust your eyes anymore. There are some people trying to do things to combat it, like Canon and, the other big, photography sites or photography products are trying to add some sort of signature to show that they're legit pictures because these deepfakes are so convincing now. Unfortunately, anyone could take one of those cameras that signs those pictures showing them as real and simply take a picture of an image online that's been doctored. So we really can't trust what we see and hear anymore unless we're in person. um, Microsoft got hacked twice this year. Very alarming. They have long been known as one of the best cybersecurity people, so it's very alarming to see this happen. The first one, their CMCC tenants were hacked. Office 365. These are super secure. They're supposed to be the securest place where governments talk about weapons and how to build defenses and missiles and things like that. So super alarming. I'm not sure how that's all going to fall out eventually. And then the second one was just embarrassing. Old machine that hadn't been properly set up or managed, and it had admin rights on it, and so as a result, they were able to hack the email. And then Microsoft subsequently found out that there was some issues with, it's my understanding, how they manage single sign-on between Azure and on-prem. So if you have single sign-on between Azure and on-prem, give us a call. We can help you take a look and make sure. I believe that Microsoft has been offering some free security services to try and help people mitigate those risks. And then, as you know, one of the things that's been scariest for years and years to IT professionals is, even if you're doing everything right, even if you're patching and doing everything right, there are still bugs that allow people a full takeover of your computer network that have been around for decades. And I hope that they were never found previously, but there could have been somebody who was hacking for literally decades, and nobody could stop them because nobody knew about this particular vulnerability. So with AI entering cybercrime, all of those vulnerabilities are much more likely to be found in a much faster time frame. I like to think that it is going to also happen on the defense side, but certainly AI entering cybercrime means that all of those risks are going to be highlighted. Quantum computing is an exciting thing that's happening. Right now, we have computing that's bit-based, right? It's either off or on. Quantum computing uses qubits, which can be off or on or something kind of halfway between. And it's really difficult to do. But we've seen some great strides. And the crazy thing is about, when quantum computing is completed, then basically all the encryption on the internet is broken instantly, because quantum computing can hack that in like seconds. So all the big countries, China, United States, probably any other of the big economies in the world, are collecting all the traffic on the internet right now, so that they can decrypt that after quantum computing becomes affordable, and get a ton of intelligence on everything that's been going on. So be aware. Another thing that's very common now that everybody's dealing with MFA, a lot of MFA solutions offer you a push where you try and sign in and it sends something to your phone, which is great. It's very convenient. But when you start getting hundreds of those in the middle of the night, then a lot of people, probably one of those people who gave their work password away without a chocolatey bribe, are just going to say yes, just so that it will stop annoying them in the middle of the night. And that's an MFA exhaustion account. Even though they know it's not them, they're still just going to click yes. And so, if you're in the IT department or in charge of cybersecurity, I encourage you to use something that doesn't use push multi-factor authentication. Or use something like Microsoft is doing. I think they've done a great job on their multi-factor app. It gives you a 2-digit number that you have to enter before you click yes, so that those exhaustion attacks can't be effective on their app. So prevention. How do we prevent that? Let me tell you a story about the security software salesperson. He says, so you're a salesperson, what do you sell? IT security software, he said. There's one product that most businesses craze these days. It's this one. Hacks cost businesses millions. Why some cities are even paying hefty ransoms to get their data back. Many in IT security blames and security professionals blame ignorant, careless employees for most of the issues. Some research suggests that millennial employees are the most blasé about the whole thing. Yet my conversation with the security salesman took a strange turn. We were waiting to tee off, and he suddenly said, entirely unprompted, "You know, our product doesn't work." His company is, how can I put it, quite well known in its field. So I had to ask, wait, you're selling stuff you know doesn't work? Most of the hackers are always one step ahead, he said. It doesn't matter what the security software is, they'll find a way around it. There's no way of catching them? Simple steps can make the difference between losing your online accounts or maintaining what is now a precious commodity, your privacy. Most of them are overseas. If you can even find where they are, if you know what country they're in, their government doesn't care and won't do anything about it, he explained. So there's nothing anyone can do? No, not really, he said, after he hit a very nice 3-iron. Our software's pretty good compared to most of the others, so no, I don't feel bad. Anyways, I get to play golf 3 times a week. The reality is that as a defender, we have a great task. We have a great task of providing the protection 100% of the time on all of our software, right? But a hacker only has to find one problem once right now, and so we really have to be better on the defense side than the hackers have to be on the attacking side. And all the security people nowadays say that you really need an onion because we know that some security items don't get patched for decades. We don't even know about them for decades. So traditional methods are valuable and still need to be used. Things like network segmentation, antivirus, backups, all those important things that are basic. But you also need nowadays a managed detection and response, a second line of defense. Something that tells you when someone is in your network moving around like a hacker would. And that's what managed detection and response does. And if you get a good one, they'll take care of it for you immediately. And you should be getting 24/7 monitoring of your network to try and keep you safe. But the most important thing in any environment, in any business environment, is the employees. The people in the network. You are the one who makes the decision to be careful about the links you click on, to be careful about the emails you respond to be careful about the attachments you open. Only you can control that. No matter how good the security filter is on your email, it doesn't matter. Some stuff is going to get through, and when it does, you need your employees, we need you to make the smart decision, to look carefully. And I know that it's a big ask because we're all busy at work. But when the difference is millions of dollars, it really makes it worthwhile to go ahead and spend the extra time. This is a big problem and it's getting bigger. It's only by having our employees be cautious that we can still continue to be profitable as businesses moving forward. Let's talk a little bit about the different things that we do. So phishing training is a big thing. As we know, 90% of all cyber attacks are phishing training, are phishing attacks, right? And so we should have some sort of training, even though it's annoying, that occasionally sends us fake emails so that we can identify those people who need to get additional training on how to deal with those, to be taught to be more careful with what they're opening up and working with. Dealing with pop-up browser ads, right? So a lot of those pop-up browser attacks that tell you you've got some sort of horrible virus or something else is about to explode on your computer to try and get you to call a number, those are all easily dealt with by pressing Control-Alt-Delete on a Windows computer and just restarting or deleting your browser instance from the task manager. Or if you're not comfortable doing that, just power your computer, restart your computer. And while it's not ideal, you certainly don't want to interact with any of those items because they're already using some fairly dubious means to try and get you. Uh, you want to be careful when you interact with those ads because they could use some cross-site scripting to try and drive you to places where you'll get malware. Then social engineering attacks. We need to be wary not only on our technology, but on the phone, in the mail, in person. Remember, all cybercrime started with social engineering attacks. These are, the old school people. And some of them are very personable and very persuasive, uh, just like Kevin Mitnick was. So we need to be wary in person as well. I encourage everyone to get mobile device storage encryption and MDM. Do what you can to secure your mobile devices, but frankly, just don't install stuff that you don't need on your phone. If it's a work phone, if it's a personal phone, do whatever you want, right? But just be aware that phone that goes into your business, that's going to expose a lot of different things, and it's going to be exposed to a lot of different things. And please, public Wi-Fi, just don't. Password managers. If you are anywhere on the internet where you are required to log in, we really recommend that you should be using a password manager at this stage in the game. We recommend Bitwarden currently. It's a great product, and the security industry speaks very highly of it. So that's a great one. There are other ones if you want to look for something else, but that's the one that we're currently recommending. Geofencing. One of the things that most business routers can do, and email as well, is geofencing, where you can take top-level domains for countries, and you can block them in email. You can geofence using routers, which doesn't allow IP addresses that are being used in countries that are known to have a lot of malicious actors, say Russia or China or Nigeria, and you can block those entirely. So you should be using geofencing on your business routers. Network segmentation. Because of the IoT and all of those items that are just not very secure, you should segment your network. You should segment your phones to their own section. You should segment your printers to your own section. You should segment all of your smart devices to a separate section, and then have your computers and your servers on their own network subnets as well. So that's important as well. And then there's physical asset security and disposal. So if you can walk up and touch a server or a switch or a plug into someone's computer port at their work, you need to have physical asset security on those devices. I mean, they really shouldn't be able to touch your switches. They shouldn't be able to touch your servers. And in an ideal situation, you should be deactivating any network ports that aren't in active use. That does require IT people to be involved whenever assets are moved, but it's certainly the most secure way to do things. Then, as far as disposal, we have a lot of different ways that people recommend, but for sure you should be going through some sort of at least a data scrubbing on anything that you let out of your organization to get rid of any sensitive, financial information or inside information for your company. Any physical asset, any computer or laptop or even a phone should be scrubbed before it's either destroyed or given to an employee that can use its remaining useful life. We recommend a 5-year replacement cycle at OfficeSmith, where each of your devices gets replaced every 5 years. And it's a little bit disruptive to get a new device, but it's much less disruptive than having your device fail and then having to wait for something to show up so that you can begin working again. So we go with a 5-year cycle. In most cases, that is before any significant failures on devices, and so that uptime is kept as high as possible. Because to be honest, the amount of money that we spend for computers nowadays is trivial compared to the amount of money that we lose when our employees can't work. over 2 hours of security training a week. So that's what we do here at Office Smith. We go to over 2 hours of security training a week to try and stay on top of the what's going on in the industry, and hopefully you're benefiting from some of that today. Some of the interesting things that are happening right now is the EU, which originally came out with the privacy laws, has come out with something that's really good. It's called they're trying to enact a, oh, yeah, no, I think it might have started with the EU, but I think the U.S. cyber security arm actually is the one who recently came out and said that that they're going to require manufacturers of commercial, or I'm sorry, residential routers and network stuff to start doing three things better. Because most people, once they get a router in their home and they set it up once, they never upgrade the firmware. And so the new routers that come out now that this law has been passed is going to require manufacturers to automatically update firmware. The other thing is, a lot of web interfaces on devices are internet facing, right? And Cisco, which is a company that is huge and has a lot of experience in doing this sort of thing, they recently had a huge problem where their web-facing interface was hacked. And so the U.S. Cybersecurity four-letter abbreviation has said, we just don't want any way to access from the internet your routers anymore. And that's, again, a great idea. And then the third one is that you're going to have to physically touch a button on your router to make any configuration changes that affect security. Which, again, the physical presence. You should be able to only have your critical infrastructure accessed by authorized individuals. So, those are all great changes. The EU is also doing something that is a little bit alarming, but it seems to be for the right reasons. There's quite a bit of child exploitation that goes on the internet, and in order to try and prevent that, they're trying to have a backdoor for every type of encryption, as well as your web browsers. And there's quite a bit of fighting going on right now. It's unclear who's eventually going to win that: the privacy advocates or the EU's requirement for backdoors to monitor people. But certainly that is something to be aware of. That those changes could be happening. Another interesting thing that's happening is Google is changing how they manage cookies, and it's a huge deal. It could require us all to sign in to a lot more websites, which is going to make that password manager even more important. But it's the first truly private way to get meaningful ads. It's all going to happen in your browser, and so there won't be cookies anymore per se. They will bid live on your computer for the rights to sell you advertising space. So it's very interesting. Because Google has such a pervasive market share on web browsers, it will probably happen. There's a lot of people doing things where they can to try and prevent that, requiring everybody to sign in and create accounts, but we'll see how that shakes out over the next year or so as well. Finally, let's finish up by just discussing a few threats and mitigation strategies for your company. Is there something that your company should be doing different? We'd love to hear from you. If you want to send us either at info@officesmithllc.com or jfinnegan@officesmithllc.com. We'd love to hear from you and know what your company's doing to help keep you safe and during this digital crime wave that we're seeing. Anyways, we hope that your 2024 is a wonderful and safe, and that this is helpful to you and your family. This is certainly, people love this in the security side of things. A lot of security training is required by by insurance. If you need that in-person security training, we'd be happy to come by and give this training to your company. Again, just drop us a line at info@officesmithllc.com, or give us a call at 602 742 2660. Thanks so much and have a great day.